So she was one of the 3 single people, I think, in that church besides myself. So we would all go do things. And man, I was just amazed by this young lady. And when she would speak, the word came out of her mouth. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. You know, a chick that loves God. Who would have thought that could be found? But I was still a little nervous because I was new at this church. And man, I didn't want to do anything that would give anybody a false perception. And so I prayed continually about it. And I said, God, if this is your plan for me, you've got to convince me. You've got to. So one night we went to a concert. And this band showed up in town. They were actually there because the guys in the band were in a wedding. And the church they were at, the wedding for, the guy was the youth pastor. And he's like, man, y'all came into town. You got to play. So they just put on this quick little impromptu concert. So she told me about it. Hey, do you want to go? Yeah, sure. But man, see, I don't know about just you and me going together because that would look bad. So I called my friend Scott. And I said, Scott, Annie's called me and she wants me to go to this concert. He's like, dude, that sounds great, man. You going, right? I said, man, I'm only going if you're going because I don't want it to look bad. I said, what do you mean look bad? Well, I mean, I like her a lot. And I'd really like to get to know her, but, you know, it could just look bad, man. I just got here. You know what I'm saying? He's like, yeah, I know what you're saying, but you're stupid and you're superficial. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. I said, look, let's go. And, you know, you just kind of stay in between us. Just be there. Because I don't want her to think anything, and I don't want other people to think anything. And let's just not worry about it. And he's like, okay, fine, man, whatever. So we go to this concert, and Annie's got some friends, and she sits right by one of her friends. And Scott's standing there looking, and I'm like, he said, nah, I sit on the end. Thank you, Scott. So I'm sitting there, all close to Scott. Looked real weird. Trying to keep my distance, you know, and trying to maintain my appearances and my stupidity. And the band is playing all their songs that, you know, things that I like. It's great music. I'll loan some of y'all some CDs if you want to hear them. They're crazy. And then about halfway through, the guy just stops and he says, you know, this was not a planned concert. We really weren't supposed to be here. And we do these songs on tour every night. And to tell you the truth, this is not why we play music. We play music to worship. Would you guys mind if we just kind of stop doing our thing and just worship for a little bit? Church is like, yeah. So the guy just starts singing these hymns and these worship songs, and then the band had to kind of figure out where they were and just try to keep up. James, they went on for like 45 minutes. It never stopped. This guy knows more music than anybody I know. He was singing hymns that I'm like, man, I hadn't heard that since I was 3. And he was just singing and worshiping. And man, I'm just standing there singing with my eyes closed, because y'all know me, that's what I do. And I'm just singing, and I'm singing, and I'm singing. And I'm just spent. I mean, I had just worshiped till I was just wore out. I'm sweaty. Don't smell real good. I'm all pitted out. Some of y'all know what that means. And I sat down. I just sat down on the pew there, and I put my hands on the pew in front of me. We're on the second row, and I'm leaning my head on it. And I'm sitting there. Scott, Annie. Thank you, Scott. You're supposed to be over here. I'm sitting here and I'm praying. And I remember praying, God, this has been probably one of the most refreshing and awesome nights of my life. And God, you have reaffirmed in my heart that this is what I want to do with my life. I want to lead people in worship. I want to sing of your goodness and declare your majesty. God, that is what I want to do with my life. And Lord, I pray that you'll give me the opportunity to do that. And I pray that you'll surround me with people that have that same desire to worship you. And I was just exhausted. You ever been just prayed out? I mean, just, you ran out of words and you just prayed out. I mean, I was prayed out. And I'm sitting there and man, they're still singing. This thing did not stop. It just went on and on. It's like Energizer Bunny worship. It just went on. And I'm just sitting there, my eyes closed, just listening, not singing, not praying. I'm just spent. Man, I just leaned back in my seat for a minute and I'm sitting there. I just leaned my head back and I looked up. And right beside me is Annie. Now, I knew that Annie was interested in me because her friends had told me and made that very clear. And I know how women are when they're playing that game. Ladies, I'm calling you out. Okay? But let me tell you what wrecked me. Here she is, with both hands in the air, on her tippy toes, singing at the top of her lungs, oblivious to who was around her. She didn't care. She was there to worship. And I looked up, and it's like God said, there she is. And my next response was, yes, Lord. That was it. That was it. It was the end of the conversation. I was done. This is how bad it was. I didn't say nothing. I just stood up, continued to sing, and every now and I'd look at her, and I'm thinking, man, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this girl, and she doesn't even know it. So, I didn't say anything. We get done with the concert, and we go out front, and she wants to go talk to her friends. And it's me and Scott, and we're walking outside. And Scott looks over at me, and he said, well, what happened? Man, I thought I was playing it cool. I'm like, what happened what? Man, it was, it was a good concert. It's great, man. They're a good band. Something happened. You're different. Scott, I don't have words to explain it right now, but I can tell you this. You remember that thing that I told you about, being here with us, and man, you just stay in between us because I don't want anybody to think anything. I think I'm going to marry her. That's what I told him. And he's like, what? And I recounted him the experience. And this is what he said. He said, well, if you're going to have a reason to marry a woman, that's a pretty good one. Is it not? It was a spiritual experience. Now, let's go back and analyze that. What was spiritual about it? Was it that I had a warm fuzzy? What was spiritual about it was I made a connection with someone who loved Jesus as much as I do. That connection was in truth. That caused me to write a spiritual song. I'll share it with you sometime. I wrote a song for my wife on our honeymoon. And I wrote it as a spiritual song, thanking God for giving us an opportunity to spend our lives together. That's a spiritual song. When someone comes into an encounter and God moves in their heart, moves in their life, they write a spiritual song. Now, let me also give you this. If you write a song that is unbiblical, it is not a spiritual song. When I was living down in the same area, a friend of mine conned me into going to a Christian coffee house. Do you know what you find when you go to a Christian coffee house? People who write songs who can't get anyone else to listen to them. That's where they're at. And there was some good stuff going on there, but there was this guy who got up there and he said, the Lord has given me this song. And he talked about one day we'll be in the presence of God, and when we're there, that we'll be in God's presence, and God will never be lonely again. And he sang the song that said, a drink of bread, a toast of wine, because you remember Jesus said, I won't eat of this bread or drink of this cup till I'm in the new kingdom. And then the next line was, Jesus will never be lonely again. Well, does anybody want to take a stab at the problem in that song? Jesus was never lonely in the first place. Jesus is complete in His Godness and in the Godhead. Jesus doesn't need us. Do you see my point? Just because you've written a song and included the word Jesus in it doesn't mean it's a spiritual song. It's got to have some biblical truth to it. Now, I want us to jump over to a different concept, and then I want